ತುಂಬಾ ಟೈಟಾಗಿ ಏನು ಬರಲ್ಲ.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome back to the day 2 session of the national level FDP, Changing Aspirations in Education scenario, with a new theme of today's session, which is about digital world, wherein each field in today's scenario is being digitalized. The biggest part of our digital transformation is changing the way we think. With this thought, we have an eminent speaker, Dr. Amit Gupta, to deliberate on future perspective of digital education. Professor Amit Gupta, an engineer, MBA PhD by education, a certified entrepreneurship educator from IIM Bangalore, active in technology ventures, Stanford Technology Ventures program with experience, is passionate about education, teaching learning process and student learning outcomes, and has done number of initiatives to improve universities and colleges across these domains. Student-centric learning is an important goal for him, and he has authored number of research papers on future of education. Employing design thinking principles in education is his latest research area. I am very happy to inform you that He is among the top 25% of entrepreneurship personality trains for the Founders Institute's test worldwide. He was shortlisted in NASSCOM 10,000 startups for his social entrepreneurship venture. Top 12 finalists in Bloomberg UTV, the Pitch National Business Panel contest, and top 27 finalists in ET Now Pioneering Leaders Season 2. Professor Gupta's 30 plus years of corporate and academic career include stints in the corporate sector in well-known organizations like ITC and Amul, as well as founding director in some B schools. I am extremely happy to welcome you on behalf of management, college, principal, and I wholeheartedly welcome you for this session, sir. I also welcome our dynamic leader, motivator, and principal of Abbas Khan College for Women, Professor Zubaida Begum, on behalf of everyone present here. Welcome, madam. I also welcome Dr. M.S. Vidya, IQAC Coordinator and HOD of Kannada, and Dr. Saida Tabassum, Assistant IQAC Coordinator and Staff Secretary. And I also welcome all the faculty members of our college for this program. Now it's my duty to welcome our participants of today's session. I welcome all the participants to the program. Now I request Dr. Amit Gupta to start the session. Sir, you can please start the session. You can unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, and is the sharing screen allowed?
Yes, sir, it's allowed.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction and the invitation to address this, August gathering of faculty members from, I guess all over, right?
Thank
And
you, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
think it's a pleasure and an honor for me to address them. And so a warm welcome to everybody. Uh, yeah, so I will basically, of course, I think the pandemic has, really put us through a lot of learning and unlearning, right? And as you rightly said, I think we need to look at the issues and challenges of digital learning in the future perspective, and that's the topic I will be touching upon. And I hope I can get some inputs and reflections from the faculty members here, because they are the real practicing people, right? They're the practicing day in and day out, and I'm sure, I hope they would identify with the kind of issues I would be putting up, issues and challenges, and what is the way forward, and reflect upon them, and also give the inputs and how they look at these issues, right? And that's a very important part that I would like them to reflect upon, right? Very, very importantly. And I think so I will start with certain I will share my slide, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just give me a minute. Yeah, yeah, I will start with the presentation, and sometime in between, I would take you through, in the middle of my session, in the next 1 hour, 1 to 1.5 hour, I would take you also through a short video, uh, which actually talks about, how do you design your online learning programs, and I hope it would be of interest to all of you. And so let me start sharing my presentation, and then in between we'll take a video and then again come back to the presentation. And I would definitely like you know uh, you people to interact and put up your questions as and when so that we can have a healthy interaction. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, please.
Are you able to connect, sir? Hello? Hello? Are you able to hear us, sir? Hello, Amit, sir? Please unmute, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, it was on mute, so I
Yeah,
couldn't.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Fine. Fine. Thank you. I think the first challenge we faced is of internet connectivity, and
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sure all faculty would share that anxiety with me, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
they're having problems day in and day out with this kind of issues, but that's the way of life, right? And I'm sure all of us have become resilient, right, with this kind of situation, right? Yeah. Okay. So, okay, I'll just put up my video because of the bandwidth, right, and then come back when we have to discuss, if you don't mind. Okay. So, as the title suggests, we are looking at the future perspective of digital education, right? And
Any?
yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So I just would like to start, with these brief learning codes which you see on your screen, and we're talking about learning, and because it's an education program, we're talking about permanent change in a person's knowledge of behavior due to experience. We're talking about change is the learner's experience in the environment. So all these quotes talk about a transformative process. We talk about input, process, and reflection. We talk about make sense of future problems and opportunities by acquiring knowledge and skills. Uh, we talk about learners' experience and interaction with the world. Different quotes also talk about one's experience of acquisition and mastery of knowing something, uh, organized intentional process of testing ideas relevant to problems, and finally, a process that leads to change, which occurs as a result of experience and increases the potential of improved performance and future learning. Now, these are quotes from, obviously very, very, famous people in the education domain. And the reason why I have put this up is that all of them actually talk about experience, talk about interaction, talk about, all these issues, which I'm sure in the digital world we have to take cognizance about. Is our engagement, is our learner centric experience really taking place, right? And those are some of the issues and challenges that I'm sure we would be sort of grappling with, all of us, right? Okay, so to set the context, let me you know put in place what are the education development priorities that we are seeing, right? Now, in the national context, I mean, this encompasses both the national and the local and the institutional context, whether it's a school, college, or higher education institution, right? We're talking about universal access, right, to quality. We're talking about equitable access to quality, whether it's elementary, secondary, higher secondary, tertiary education. We're talking about bridging gender and social category gaps and inequalities in access to education, teaching learning processes, and learning outcomes. Now, I'm sure this is being hosted by a minority institution, and I'm sure gender and social category gaps and inequalities is an important point here, right? And we would like to significantly improve quality of education to ensure improved student learning. So key points here are equity, inclusion, access, gender and social gaps, improving quality of learning of student outcomes. The fifth point, improving teacher quality and performance, effective use of ICT for education, right? All these are very, very important. Continuing with that, expanding opportunities for skill development and vocational education and training, raising literacy level among youth and adults, ensuring increased and well targeted financing of education programs. We would like, as a country, we would like to reach at least 6% of the GDP in terms of investment on education, right? Up from the 1.5 to 2% which we are at today. We would like to institutionalize a responsive, participatory, and accountable systems for governance, professionalizing and improving school or college leadership along with sound quality management systems. Now these are obviously aspirations that we are looking at, right? Now what is the context of digital initiatives that we look at today, right? Let's keep the context in mind. As all of us know, and you and me know, that India as a country is a global leader in information and communication technologies, right? Now, we need to keep this context and the education development priorities in mind when we talk about issues and challenges in terms of education. Now, we know the Digital India campaign is helping to transform nation, especially in empowering society, and we're becoming a knowledge economy. We are in Industry 4.0, and we're talking about being the data being the new oil. We're talking about data analytics, we're talking about business analytics, etc. And therefore, educational technology will play an important role in the improvement of educational processes and outcomes, right? We're talking about relationship between technology and education at all levels is bi-directional. Basically, education has to feed technology, technology has to feed education, and we need instructional design, we need better online design to keep the interaction, experience, and learner centricity and engagement on, right? And therefore extensive use of technology in teaching and learning, in fact removing language barriers, right? I think very, very important to have content in different languages, increasing access for the differently abled or the young students, and education planning and management. Now, that's the backdrop and the context within which of technology and education development priorities that we are looking at this topic today. Now, before looking at the specific issues and challenges for a teacher or an institution, let me put up the reflection points for all of you. Now, when I say the reflection points for digital education, and you'll see two slides, you'll see two sides. One is the supply side, one is the demand side. When I say supply side, what do I mean? I mean the institutions, whether it's a school or a college or a higher education institution, whether it's a primary, secondary, tertiary education. There are issues of scale, cost, and quality. When I talk about the demand side, I'm talking about the students. I'm talking about whether the student is in school or college or wherever he or she is. And the issues we need to reflect upon is equity, access, affordability. Now, to really reflect upon the future of digital education, I think these are very, very, very critical issues to reflect upon as educators or as institutional leaders or academic leadership. The principal and the governing council of the supply side, which is the institution, right? We need to look at, is the scale improving? Is the cost coming down? And very, very importantly, it's obvious that this, as the scale improves, right, and therefore you reach out to more people, more and more students, even if it's online, your cost per unit comes down, right? That's a very, very important business imperative of scale versus cost at the supply side of institutions. As scale goes up, as the number of students goes up in digital education, the cost comes down, right? The point to reflect upon on the supply side is about the quality. Now, obviously, each one of us would have perspectives, right, on whether the quality goes up or down or remains the same, right? My submission here is that, yeah, sorry. Uh, my submission here is that the quality is dependent on the educator, on the design, on the online design of your courses, on the instructional design of your courses, right? And all of us are obviously struggling with that point where we want to engage our students, and therefore instructional design and online design is very, very important. And that is why I want to show some theory behind the way education has evolved and the way we need to design our courses to have the experience and the engagement at least equal to, if not better than, offline education, because that's a comparison that students and parents are really looking at. So scale goes up, cost comes down, obviously. Quality is an issue, is a function of how well we do instructional design, how well we do online design, and that is, I'll share some aspects on that. On the demand side, we're looking at equity, access, and affordability of students and parents. Is the reach enough? Yes, it should be. Are we really looking at equity across different, strata of society, across gender, across social gaps, right? And that's something which I think both the public policy and the institution and the academic leadership and the teachers have to really struggle at. Affordability, yes, likely to be so. As we reach scale and cost comes down, is likely to be more and more affordable. Now, these are points to be kept in mind as we go ahead on this topic that I'm looking at. So, supply side and demand side, there are reflection points, and but the point I'm going to stress upon today, given the limited time that I have, is we all know that as scale goes up, quality cost comes down. But what about quality? Quality of experience, quality of engagement, quality of learning outcomes, quality of transferring the skills to the students, right? How is it that as educators we need to look at that? This being a faculty development program, I would like to focus on that issue of quality and take you through certain qualitative aspects, right? Of how do you do online design and things like that. Before we get into that, of course, I would like to, take an overview of what we are really looking at, right? Right. Yeah. Now, to take a technology use and integration overview, right? We're looking at thrust of technological interventions. Which areas are we looking at in terms of technological interventions? Very, very importantly, right? There are six, major areas depending on the educational priorities that I have outlined earlier, a couple of slides back. Very importantly, we're looking at teaching, learning, and evaluation processes. All of us know how the processes have evolved in the last 10 months or so while we've been teaching our students. We know we have had challenges in our evaluation and assessment process. Probably all institutions may or may not be able to afford online proctoring, including human and, you know, uh, uh, including human and uh, artificial intelligence led proctoring. Uh, the other very important aspect is how does technology support teacher preparation and professional development? How do you go in for your continuous, upskilling and reskilling, right? Given the technological landscape that we're looking at. Third point, how do we enhance educational access? Now, these are important points to keep in mind. The other 3 points at the bottom of the slide that you see are how do you streamline educational management and administration? And this is extremely important for institutional leaders, academic leaders. We're talking about attendance systems. We're talking about, how do you see that the attention is grabbed of the students? How do you look at administrative issues of fee payment, etc. Right? And that's one area that is very, very important. Removing language barriers, right? Are we being, if we go for open programs, right, as opposed, because scale would be reached more by open programs, by looking at distance learning education, looking at, overview of can we reach different sections of society in terms of overcoming language barriers, having local language content, right? These are the thrust of technological intervention, since we're talking about future of digital this, right? Including, high level technology. And can we really take along the access to differently abled or the young students? Can we be more inclusive and equitable in our overall, thrust of educational through, technology initiatives? I think that's very, very important that we're looking at. Okay, so that's the background of technological interventions. I think the slides are getting stuck. I'll just change it for a minute. Yeah. Just give me a minute, please. Okay, so continuing with technology use and integration. Now, what are the future technologies that can really help all these areas of now, some of the most obvious ones that we're all hearing about artificial intelligence. If somebody is teaching a science subject, and in terms of let's take a biology lesson, and we're looking at how the heart functions or how the liver functions, virtual reality and artificial intelligence can actually show you the of the heart pumping, right? How is that? And this is extremely, extremely important of engaging digital education, I think. So that's an example, right? Of commerce or arts, or doesn't matter, really matter. Why can't you show a virtual reality of, a place in, for your geography lesson or history lesson or humanities lesson or arts and culture lesson, right? Of course, this would require extensive artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain technology, handheld computing devices, adaptive computing software. Now, the question that arises here is, do educators have to really do we need a stronger academic industry interface? Can we all tie up as institutions with educational technology firms, with IT companies who are working in the education sector, and can we help them with our domain expertise? Because as educators, we are the domain experts in our respective subjects, whereas the education technology companies and the IT companies are, and India is the capital of all this, are the experts in AI, machine learning, blockchain, smart boards, and so on and so forth. But unless we have a better academic industry interface, we would not be able to continue this research. So I think some amount of bandwidth of educators has to shift from pure academic research to applied research to really make educational technology more effective, better, more experiential, better learning outcomes for the students, more engaging online, right? So that probably a few years down the line, a few months down the line, we have an excellent blended technology that works both online and offline. Those which require more face to face could be offline. Those which require more engagement and experiential could remain online, so that you enhance the experience of the students, right? The third point that we really need to talk about here is, before scaling up interventions, the use and integration of technology to improve multiple aspects of education has to be rigorously and transparently evaluated in the relevant context. Can we look at pilots with technology companies? Can we look at pilots with education companies? And if yes, how do we do it? Right. So we need to, I think as educators, we need to think about all these points, right? Yeah. So just to reinforce and put it all together, we have a architecture in terms of the regulatory architecture. So emerging and disruptive technologies which could be used in education across different branches and disciplines. As I said, artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D simulation, other upcoming technologies. To categorize emergent technology based on their potential, we have the National Educational Technology Forum. And so we could start working not only with industry, but also with the government, right? The government has a National Educational Technology Forum, NETF. The Ministry of Education recommends National Research INRF to take up further research on the identified areas. That's National Research Foundation. So can we have a public policy and a private initiative between educators, educational institutions, educational technology and IT companies, and the emerging regulatory authorities of Ministry of Education, the National Educational Technology Forum, and the National Research Foundation. I would strongly recommend that all of us reach out to both the government National Educational Technology Forum and the National Research Foundation to actually go in for this kind of tripartite research and application. Uh, Look at those of us educators who could look at applied research. Some of us continue doing academic research, pure academic research, which are meant for journals and publications, which obviously enhances the ranks of the ranking of your educational institution. But I think some of us have to focus on application, on applied research, along with the government educational technology forum as well as the IT companies. Very, very important. Uh, Let me throw some light, and as all of you know, right, we have the NEP, the New Education National Education Policy 2020, right, and that's something very important on our, uh, very, very important on our plate. Now, with respect to online and digital education, ensuring equitable use of technology, what are the NEP 2020 major points that we need to keep? And I'm sure all your institutions are trying to align, sorry, are trying to align with NEP, the policy, and we need to continue doing it for the next few years. Uh, NEP recognizes the importance of these points. We're talking about leveraging advantages of technology while acknowledging the potential risks and dangers. The risk and dangers could extend to on-screen time, could extend to hacking, could extend to children being overexposed to technology and losing the. A very important point here is that children or students should not lose their cognitive skills while getting overexposed to technology. I think that's a potential risk and danger all of us educators need to take cognizance of, because I think the future skills are going to be in the cognitive side, right, and not necessarily in the psychomotor skills only in terms of using technology, right? Can Do we not allow children to think for themselves and reflect upon them? Technology would have slight potential risks of losing out on thinking, on losing out the cognitive skills, and that's I mean, I think all of us have to be very very careful on that. We need to make students learn how to learn and not just teach, right? And there's this famous saying that there's a question that why do teachers teach and students don't learn, right? And we need to really reflect and answer those questions. The second point is carefully designed and appropriately scaled pilot studies to determine the benefits of digital online education. Here again, I come to how do I ensure quality? How do we ensure quality with, we don't lose the basics of taxonomy and learning outcome oriented education. We don't lose the sight of learner centric education. We don't lose sight of the theories of education in terms of constructionist and behavioristic and things like that, which I'll share with you in terms of a little while later in terms of the video. The third point is optimizing and expanding the existing digital platforms and the ongoing ICT based educational initiatives to meet current needs as well as future challenges. The fourth point, using technology for online and digital education adequately to address concerns of, and this is what NEP talks about because equity is extremely important from a national point of view, right? So, how do you ensure this equitable use of technology? What are the online and digital education challenges, right? Let's look at the challenges. We've looked at the issues, we've looked at the context, we've looked at what technologies we could use, right? And all of that. Now, what are the challenges, right? We're looking at six broad areas of challenges here on this slide. We're looking on the left side at digital competencies of teachers to meet further need. I'm sure all of us would continue to learn, unlearn, and relearn and reskill and upskill ourselves, and that's one of the agenda. And I think that's one of the objectives of such faculty development programs, where we exchange views on what are the compelling and the burning issues, right, in education as well as digital education. So I'm sure institutions have to go further, and I think if we get into applied research along with the government's educational technology forum and IT companies and educational technology companies, this would automatically come. We would keep getting more and more competent teachers to meet further needs. The second challenge is unavailability of open and public digital resources infrastructure. Now, we hear a lot of this, privacy issues, private digital resources, no public access, like the MITs of the world have open access, right? Any one of you can go to MIT Open Course Fair and take a course, right? Take a course for your students, get access to course material. Can we take the lead in India of doing this? Can some universities join hands, have open and public digital resources, right? So that we reduce the cost of developing digital content. And I mean, the government you could work with the government together on this, and that's certain, very, very important. The third point that we see is challenges that we see. Uh, how we overcome the challenges is our joint effort together. There could be limitation in delivering certain types of courses, certain types of subjects in online or digital space. Some of you, I'm sure all of you are across different disciplines and different subjects. You would realize that some subjects are easier to adapt and adopt in the online medium rather than other subjects. It's not that you cannot adopt, but then you might require more advanced technology. And this is where, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, 3D. Now, these technologies today, you might say, are very, very expensive. But, coming back to the basic business imperative, as scale goes up, cost comes down. Today, they're very expensive because no school or college is using those technologies. The moment you start using those technologies, right, every second school and college uses it, the prices are going to crash. I'm sure all of us have lived, many of us who are in the, probably an older generation who have lived through the 90s and the 2000s realize that, you know, talking about my own personal experience, my first mobile phone charge in 94, 95, BPL mobile in Bombay, I paid 35 rupees a minute, both for an outgoing call and an incoming call. And I'm sure a lot of you who are, in my age bracket would have shared that anguish. Today, we don't even pay 1 rupee for an outgoing call, and we don't pay for an incoming call. Just imagine paying for incoming calls at 35 rupees per minute. I mean, we'll have to keep cutting off the calls because, we don't want to pay 35 rupees per minute. And what has happened today, 25 years down the line of that, same 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and now we are on the verge of 5G technology, where access, equity, you know, all kinds of data, voice, and video are being delivered through your mobile phone at extremely affordable prices. In fact, one of the lowest prices in the world, right? So whether it's movies, whether it's OTT platforms, whether it's in music streaming, whatever it may be, and I think education is following that form, right? I mean, can we have an OTT kind of platform, right? And today, I mean, all of you would have heard that Amazon Academy has, sort of entered the education space. And of course, with their kind of cost in web services, I mean, Amazon Web Services is the biggest cloud service provider in the world. So for them, it's like a forward integration. They have the backbone internet infrastructure, and they're entering this. But of course, I mean, we'll need to look at the different segments differently. You have different challenges and issues in K to 12 sector, kindergarten to 12, different challenges and issues in the test preparation sector, different challenges in the primary to secondary school, different challenges in the undergraduate and postgraduate and doctoral education. So we need to contextualize all these issues, and each one of us, depending on where we belong to, we'll have to contextualize this. The other three challenges on the right side of the screen that we see is online assessment on scale, becoming screen-based education, and bridging digital divide. Now, all of us would have realized that with the pandemic, we're going to work more and more on screen, and we're going to go out for leisure. Earlier, it was the other way around. You went out for leisure, you went to a movie and saw it on screen, right? And you went out for work to your workplace where there was no screen. I mean, no screen in the sense, less screen. Now, I think the challenge today in the future, and the pandemic probably is not the last black swan event, as they call it, right? Black swan events are very uncertain events, as Nicholas Taleb, the famous sort of predictor, has predicted that we're going to continuously see such black swan events. So how are we going to become more, screen based for work and for non-screen based for leisure? What are the challenges in that, right? uh, Online assessment on scale, as I mentioned about proctoring, right? Online proctoring, we still don't have artificial intelligence. We still don't have human intelligence to do online assessments fairly, ethically, transparently, and accountable to the whole system, right? There are issues of plagiarism, there are issues of ethics, right? And I'm sure all of us agree that the Indian jugaad system works very well when students want to sort of uh, you know uh, uh, sort of adopt unethical means to apply to their this. Now, one is proctoring, right? I mean, and here I would like to spend a minute on this. One is proctoring and sort of regulating their exams online. But I think what is more important from an effective learning outcome sphere is, can we change the very kind of assessments we have? Can we look at assessments which test their critical thinking, which test their logical reasoning, which test their reflection, which test their learnability, and does not test their memorization? Because ultimately, I mean, all of us, if you look at Bloom's taxonomy, we're not testing memory. We're not testing, I mean, we're testing understanding, we're testing comprehension, we're trying to test application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation depending on the level you are at, right? Now, can we change our very assessment mode? And there's no better time than this when we are contemplating and debating a future of digital education of dramatically, as NEP talks about critical thinking and logical reasoning, NEP 2020. I think this is a great time to disrupt the online assessment. I mean, not online, but disrupt the assessment schemes, disrupt the assessment, sort of schema, right? Can we really shift to learning outcome based and not memory based, right? And that solves our cost and adaptability of assessment on scale, right? We don't need to then worry about proctoring, right? And here is a golden opportunity when we are faced, and as they say, never let a crisis go waste. And I think this is a crisis that cannot go waste, right? Let's shift gears, right? And let's align to NEP and look at critical thinking, logical reasoning based assessments at every level, and therefore assessment challenges overcome, right? And of course, the last point of bridging the digital divide, very, very important, right? And there is a divide. I mean, I think the pandemic has thrown open, has exposed the underbelly of more inequities and inequalities of rich getting richer, poor getting poorer, losing their jobs, and so on, with a being very, very conducive to it. Okay. Yeah, coming to my next slide. Yeah. So, what is the way forward, right? What's the way forward in this? That's very, very important. We are looking in the slide of, sorry, I mean, we're talking about 6, 7, 8, looking at the way forward in online and digital education, right? We're talking about students becoming online educators. We're talking about, and this is what I've been talking about in terms of instructional design and online design. We're talking about a different approach in online assessment. We're talking about blended approach with online and experiential learning, right? We're talking about existing platforms in different languages. We're talking about availability devices, right, to eliminate digital divide. We're talking about providing we're talking about providing assistive tools for monitoring this group of learners.
Hello. Hello, sir. Hello. Hello? Sir?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I'll go back to the slide.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, okay. So we were on this slide where we're talking about, various ways of the way forward, right? So we're talking about a host of, initiatives of way forward, where we're talking about a multi-stakeholder approach. We're talking about educational institutions, we're talking about the public authorities, we're talking about a digital platform, we're talking about, different people looking at, you know, we're looking at, various ways of technologies playing a role, and so on and so forth, right? Uh, Okay, so I would be playing a video now, right? So I'll just stop sharing this and play a video. It's a little long on online design, instructional design, so please bear with me. Yeah, I just play a video. So
Welcome. This presentation was developed by Martha Schor and Jennifer Lewis. The goal of this presentation is to define the role of cognition in learning to help you determine the most appropriate instructional strategies for your online learners. The information in this presentation draws on presentations from the 2012 Conference on Distance Education held in Madison, Wisconsin. This presentation will describe the learning theories behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, and connectivism. The goal of this presentation is to help you select the best learning theory for designing the structure and the learning activities in your online course. Learning is a complex process involving mental processes that are influenced by emotional and environmental factors which can support or hinder learning. Learning theories have evolved over time to take into consideration these complex factors in an effort to explain how learning occurs and to prescribe instructional strategies to facilitate learning. Behaviorism was dominant from the early 20th century through the 1950s and 60s. Cognitivism grew in popularity in the 1960s and 70s. Here at Madison, Dave Apple came to campus in the 80s to spread information about constructivist methods. And most recently, constructivism emerged as a prominent theory of learning, influencing the active learning classrooms we're installing today. Connectivism is the new kid on the block. It's most closely associated with online learning, and it's also the least widely known here at the college. So as you go through this presentation and listen to information on the various formats, keep in mind that there's no best theory. Some learning theories can be more or less useful to your content area. So we're going to take a look at each of these individually, starting with behaviorism. Behaviorism is grounded in the study of observable behavior, physical skills, and does not take into consideration the functions of the mind. According to behaviorism, knowledge exists outside of a person and is gained through behavior modification. The theory views learning as a change in behavior that can be conditioned using positive and negative reinforcements, such as rewards and punishment. Behaviorism considers learners more passive in the learning process. The learner's role is simply to respond to the learning content provided by the instructor and to demonstrate a level of performance on specific goals and objectives. The classroom is instructor-centered, but that doesn't mean it can't be fun. Behavior is modified and conditioned by the instructor through rewards or punishment to attain the desired learning outcomes. According to behaviorists, the types of reinforcement are a critical component to learning because individual learners respond to different reinforcement based on their personal motivations. So for instance, if the learner is motivated by good grades, a good reinforcement is the use of grades. Poor grades are a negative reinforcement, which provides motivation for the learner to put in more effort to receive a better grade. According to the behaviorist view of learning, objectives should be developed that focus on the level of learning desired as well as the type of task. The role of the instructor is to provide learners with information about the appropriateness of behavior through frequent feedback. And this feedback will either reinforce their behavior or determine the consequences in the form of corrective actions required for the learner to achieve the desired outcome. Learning that involves recalling facts, defining concepts and explanations, or performing procedures are most often readily taught by behaviorist learning strategies which focus on the attainment of specific goals or the performance of physical skills. Behaviorists often focus on drill and practice activities and by identifying small incremental tasks or sub-skills that the learner needs to acquire, design specific objectives that would lead to the achievement of these goals. Next up is cognitivism. According to cognitivism, knowledge is still considered to exist outside of the person. However, this learning theory's focus is on understanding how human memory works to acquire knowledge and promote learning. The focus is on how learners acquire specific types of strategies for learning, including planning, monitoring, and evaluating, and the influence of prior knowledge, beliefs, attitudes, and values on learning. This theory developed a clearer understanding of how information is processed and stored, as well as how prior knowledge is stored in memory structures called schema for retrieval in the appropriate context. According to cognitivism, the transfer of knowledge to new situations is influenced by the way information is presented and the relevance of information presented. If information is presented poorly or too much irrelevant information is associated with relevant information, it may be difficult for the learner to sort and organize the information. This, in turn, can have an impact on the storage, retrieval, and transfer of information. So this is really critical for adult learners who have specific professional needs that require them to be able to transfer knowledge to real-world applications in their professional environments. Robert Gagne proposed 9 events of learning that correspond with specific cognitive processes. Madison College uses various versions of these learning events, this whole series, to structure and scaffold learning in a variety of learning formats, such as accelerated and active learning. Gagne proposed that these 9 events provide the conditions of learning which define the intellectual skills to be learned, as well as the sequence of instruction. He believed lessons should be organized according to these events so learners could associate new knowledge with existing structures. He also thought it could provide an appropriate level of scaffolding to support learning. Learners play an active role in learning by actively organizing information for successful processing into long-term memory for later recall. The instructor continues to determine learning outcomes and direct the learning with the additional application of specific information processing strategies to assist the learner in acquiring knowledge. To facilitate learning, the learning environment should be arranged to maximize learners' ability to retrieve prior knowledge relevant to the learning outcomes and organize the content to maximize information processing. If information is presented poorly or too much irrelevant information is associated with relevant information, it may be difficult for the learner to sort and organize the information. This in turn can have an impact on storage, retrieval, and transfer. Scaffolding is critical to adult learners who have specific professional needs that require them to be able to transfer knowledge to real-world applications in their professional environments. Instructors play a role in scaffolding the learning environment by monitoring learning and providing instructional support. Learning outcomes that are focused on complex, higher levels of learning, such as problem solving, are best explained by cognitivism because the focus is on breaking down complex problems into component parts and relating the content to be learned with prior knowledge to build higher levels of understanding. Instructional strategies consider the organization of content for learning, including the use of advanced organizers like blank outline notes for lectures or reading, and Gagne's 9 events of instruction. Next up is constructivism. Constructivism describes learning as a process where learners socially construct knowledge in meeting. According to this theory, knowledge does not exist outside of the person, but is constructed based on how a person interacts with the environment and experiences the real world. There are 2 types of constructivism: cognitive constructivism and social constructivism. Cognitive constructivism focuses on individual characteristics or attributes of the learner and their impact on learning. Social constructivism focuses on how meaning and understanding are created through social interactions. Together, they view learning as the construction of knowledge and meaning as the interpretation of incoming information through an individual's unique lens that includes their personality, beliefs, cultures, and experiences. From the constructivist perspective, learners are not merely passive receivers of knowledge, but active participants in the learning process and construct knowledge socially with peers. Instructors who base their pedagogy on constructivism take on the new role of facilitator rather than sage on the stage by actively observing and assessing the current state of individual learners and providing learning strategies to help individuals interpret and understand the content. Instructors provide relevant real-world context to help learners understand the relevance of the learning goals for them personally. The instructor will support learning by providing scaffolding to support learners in their zone of proximal development. This requires the instructor to develop skills at assessing the current state of learners and to adapt the learning experience to support their attainment of goals. In the constructivist approach, learning is context-specific and emphasizes the whole rather than the components or individual skills. Rather than focusing on small skills and building up to a larger job, constructivists present a complex situation and let the learners figure out where to start based on their current knowledge, preferences, and motivations. Instruction should situate the learning in authentic tasks that allow learners to understand why it is important to learn, as well as its relevance to them personally or professionally. Meaningful contexts allow the learning to be transferred to novel situations when students move into the real world. The use of active learning strategies support learning using real-world examples or opportunities to solve real-world problems, allowing for the greatest opportunity for transfer of knowledge. Critical thinking strategies help learners develop their skills at thinking through problems and issues. Self-reflection and self-assessments help learners continuously improve their learning by actively reflecting on the processes they use as they engage in the learning activities. Okay, the latest major learning theory comes from the rise of online learning itself and is quite recent. Connectivism is a form of experiential learning which prioritizes the set of connections formed by actions and experience over the idea that knowledge is propositional. It questions that there is any such thing as knowledge at all. Instead, knowledge is just the connections we have access to. Crowdsourcing is closely related to connectivism. The idea that we are all together smarter than any one person is the basis for almost all networked learning. In 2004, the first massive open online course, or MOOC, was launched, which quickly led to courses with thousands of students enrolled from major Ivy League institutions. In connectivism, the more people are connected, the smarter we all are. However, because traditional assessment methods are largely absent from these courses, the only assessment method that can be used is self-assessment. This type of learning is obviously not suitable for most degree-seeking students at Madison College who need credentials to enter professional fields. However, our continuing education division is currently developing a relationship with this theory and are awarding Mozilla badges for completing professional development activities. Students who are already working in their fields will take self-paced, open enrollment learning modules to develop a portfolio of documentation. They then pay a small fee, equivalent to continuing ed tuition, to earn a badge. The documentation is then stored online for employers and others to review themselves. From the connectivist perspective, learners should choose courses and information tailored to their own goals and abilities. Instructors of connectivist classrooms do not have direct relationship with individuals of any depth. Instead, they create information ahead of time and students engage with it or not as the students wish to. The instructor still supports learning by providing scaffolding to support the learners to make connections with other students and with resources in the virtual world. Like constructivism, self-reflection and self-assessments help learners continuously improve their learning by actively reflecting on the processes they use as they engage in learning activities. The difference here is that there are no instructor-controlled assessments at all. The only assessments available during the course are peer review and computer feedback. During the course, the instructor does not provide individual guidance, but is merely another participant. Instructors are mainly responsible for technical issues and wrangling behavior. The success or failure of the course largely depends on the mix of students who show up and participate. So to close, I'd like you to take a moment to think about your content area and decide which of these major approaches you think will be most helpful in teaching your course's content. I do hope you have enjoyed this presentation. If you're interested in learning more about these theories, you can check out the books that are available to you in the CETA library, which will help you learn more about these individual topics.
Sir, please unmute. Sir, please unmute.
Yeah, it's okay now. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have all of you have seen this video, and this should throw up a lot of questions in your mind, I'm sure, right? And this was what I was talking about, and we have to take this journey. I think the digital education and the blended education also has put us on a journey of going back to the basics. Now, when I say basics, what am I really referring to? I'm referring to the basics of teaching learning theory, of educational theory, right? What kind of taxonomies, what kind of pedagogies, what kind of assessments, what kind of teaching learning processes, what kind of educational governance, what kind of student engagements, what kind of learning objectives, what kind of learning outcomes, right? And all these are, there are theories behind it in terms of taxonomy, pedagogy, andragogy of adult learning, and so on and so forth. But I think it's time to get back to the basics and contextualize it to the online learning and digital platform, right? And this is where I think educators would play a major role for the future of digital education, because we can't have a one size fits all. We will have to sort of retrofit our pedagogy, our learnings, our teaching styles, the current generation's learning outcome styles, to the platform that we are getting into, to the kind of world we're getting into. In fact, the NEP also talks about some of these, where we're talking about critical thinking and logical reasoning, and they're talking about choice-based credit the schemes. They're talking about lateral entry and exit at any time of your course, right? And all these are the policy groundwork has been put forth in front of us. And I think it's up to all of us to together come together, as institutions, as educators, as get down to basics of education, get down to the theories that we are really used to in terms of our research and academic grounding. uh, you know Shake hands, collaborate with both the technology forums and the IT companies and the educational technology companies. Look at public spaces, look at public digital infrastructure, look at changes in pedagogy, and as this connectivism theory in the end showed us, that that is an ideal theory to really look at the online education forum, and that is why you see more and more of these coming up. And we might not accept it today, but sometime down the line, right, it may not be in some of our lifetimes, but sometime down the line, educational institutions will have to adopt all these approaches, right? And I think the earlier we start, the better. And I think there is a lot of ground to be covered in all this, right? In getting down to the basics of our education processes, education sort of technology, the teaching processes, the education theories, the taxonomies, the pedagogies, and all of that, right? And it's time to get back to the basics, just like we are getting back to the basics in our lives, right? The way we live, the way we work, the way we play. It's a wake-up call. So I think that that's a message that really I'm sending out, that you don't need to really just learn technology. I think we need to get back to the basics of our own domain. And when I say own domain, I'm talking about the education domain. How do we make more effective, more experiential, more outcome oriented, more learner centric, as opposed to teacher centric, right? How do you make it more engaging? How do you make it more experiential for the student to be engaged, right? And for that, I think we need to take two, 3, 4 steps back and look at the evolution of, right, from behaviorism to connectivism, right, in the last 50 years that you just saw in the video. How do we together become more smarter, right? And I think that's the crux of the crux of the problem and the solution that we are looking at, right? So getting back, let me just get back to the slide that I was showing you. And I think all of these show this, right? The slides that I've been looking at, right? I've been sharing with you. All of these are really sort of, looking at these kind of things, right? Of course, not talking about the education theories, right? Which is where what I would that's my humble submission to all of us, right? Together as a community of educators, right? That let's review, revise, reuse, rethink the education processes of connectivism or cognitivism, and take a blended approach, right? And the key initiatives that we really look at in terms of ensuring equitable use of technology here is we're looking at pilot studies on online education, right? Let's look at small pilot studies in particular subjects. We're looking at digital infrastructure in terms of joining hands with public open kind of the cloud infrastructure. We are looking at, why don't we join hands with certain people who have the infrastructure, right? We're looking at online teaching platform and tools. We're looking at content creation, digital repository and tools. Can we come together? Because as this video suggests, we are all smarter put together, right, instead of individuals. Can we address the digital divide? Can we learn looking at laying down standards or technical standards of you know and look at blended models of learning? Can we look at training and incentive for teachers? How do we incentivize and motivate our educators or our educational institutions or our academic leaders to disrupt the system? In industry, we keep talking about creative destruction, Schumpeter's creative destruction, but somehow we have lost this aspect of creative destruction in education over the law. Now that the NEP lays the certain kind of ground and turf for all of us, I think it's time to have creative destruction. It's time to have radical and incremental innovations. It's time to have innovations around not only the product and the positioning on the place in terms of delivery of channels, but also a paradigm mental shift, uh, you know, and the way also the virtual labs and the online assessment and exam that I talked about. And I think a very important thing that I've not put down on these slides is I think there has to be an outreach to our parents and students in the educational context. When I say outreach to parents and teachers, I think once we adopt these new pedagogies, once we adopt these, or even pilot studies in pedagogy and assessment schemes or schema, or new theories of education like connectivism, right? I think that there should be an outreach to students and parents where we try and explain to them why we are doing what we are doing. I think one of the things that we have been caught up in the Indian education system is that even parents and students have got into this mindset that if there's no exam, I'm not learning and I'm not going to study. Right? It's a very sociological phenomena, right? And sadly so, right? That if my exams are over today, I don't need to study tomorrow. And I think as educated community, I think got to take an evangelical role, right? Can we look at these pilot studies in online education or blended models, or can we devise training and incentives for teachers as educational leadership? Can we look at different styles of assessment and constructive connectivism kind of theories? But while I'm doing that as pilot models, can we all together as a community reach out to parents and students who are learning from us, right? Convince them or show them a demonstration of why we are using these kind of teaching theories or learning theories, why learning is more important than teaching, why assessments are more critical in terms of self-assessment, in terms of competency skill assessment, and not assessments of what you've sort of internalized and vomiting out right from the textbook, right? I think that's a critical shift of gear that we need in the Indian education system. And that will only happen if I think the community of educators and the community of, I don't think that can happen by an NEP policy being laid out, because no parent and student reads the NEP. It's the teachers, it's the educational leaders, it's the administrators who read the NEP. And can we look at these pilot, education schemes and reach out to parents and students and show them the future? I mean, one very, very important point to be made to parents and students of today is that, look, you are learning today for skills and for careers, right? And for jobs that you don't know will exist tomorrow or not by the time you graduate to 20, 22 years or 25 years old, right? And that's a crux of it, because technology is changing so fast, consumer behavior is changing so fast, right? I think the students of today are learning about skills and jobs that they don't know what jobs they're going to get into 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line. Now the question then is, what are we teaching, right? I think that's the crux of it. We're not teaching, we are learning. We are teaching them how to learn, and they are learning how to learn, right? I think that's imperative to drive down parents and students. They have to learn how to learn. When I say learn how to learn, because the context is going to change, the environment is going to change continuously, the contextualities is going to change, the situation is going to change. Can they adapt, adopt, and be resilient to learn how to learn given the context? So they should be able to access the tools and the toolkits, right, of learning how to learn. I mean, nobody teaches a plumber who comes to my house to take out the tool which fits the size of the tap, but he has his bag of tools, he has a set of tools, right? And he knows exactly which tools to take out. Or even if he doesn't know, he iterates, he keeps looking at which tool is fitting in which tap size, right? And that is how our students should be tomorrow. They shouldn't be saying that, look, I have been taught this tool to address this problem, right? So I don't know any other tool. So can we provide them with toolkit of learning how to learn, right? And I think that's where the future of digital education is going to really come from. Can we tell them? Can we teach them how to be more collaborative? Can we teach them continuous upskilling on reskilling? Can we tell? Can we teach them the value of resilience, right? Can we teach them a toolkit of resilience, of addressing, as we call, the VUCA world, right? And the VUCA world will continue to be more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, and more ambiguous. Can we teach them to embrace ambiguity? Can we teach them to, embrace volatility? Can we teach them to embrace complexity and uncertainty? How do we do that? I mean, there could be gamification in online models, which we develop along with, we are domain experts, we are educational teaching theory experts. Can we develop it along with, ICT domain experts like educational technology, IT companies, the National Educational Technology Forum, and so on and so forth, right? So I think the basic competencies required for the future of the world is what is really what is really required for us to teach people, right? So what is the implementation plan, right? We can all look at strategies and sort of initiatives, right? What is the implementation plan here, right? Obviously, we need to conduct research on disruptive technologies and current state of ICT implementation. So basically, we need to know where we are. We need to know where we want to be, and that is where I'm saying we need to be, embracing competencies rather than data. See, one of the things that I must stress upon here is that with the internet revolution, right, knowing is not enough, right? Knowing is there on the internet. The student can go to the internet and know, right? But cognitive skills of thinking through a particular thing which he or she finds in the internet is an element of very, very important element of learning, right? And that is where I think educators will really play a big role, right? So we need to continuous customization of architecture of digital education platforms at national level, including portals, apps, labs, as per, I mean, communication with the teachers has to go beyond the classroom. I don't think you need to be in the classroom for communication in with today's digital world, right? And that's how you will develop the embracing ambiguity and uncertainty, right? You cannot make students and parents expect that the teacher has to be there in front of the table, in front of the domain, in front of the dais, or so to say, right? And that's where collaboration comes in. That's where the MOOCs kind of platform comes in, right? So design development, roll out MOOCs for students and teachers with appropriate policy evaluation, certification, credit transfer. We need to look at dissemination of digital contents through multiple modes. It could be television, so that there's no digital divide. It could be apps, right? It could be collaboration and coordination with national and state level institutions for convergence, right? And all of that is very, very important that we're looking at. Yeah. Okay. So, coming to towards the end of my this, I would like to turn your attention to a global framework for education. Right. All of us know about Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations 2015 2030, the SDGs, education for all. Right. It's very, very important, and education, in fact, is one of the big, huge priorities of the Sustainable Development Goals. And the Dakar framework for action, Dakar is the Senegal's capital where this was adopted. Education for all, meeting our collective commitments by the world. Uh, the basic question is, how do we achieve these global goals, right? We have goals like expanding and improving comprehensive early childhood care and education, especially for the vulnerable and disadvantaged children. So can we really reach out? Can our graduate and postgraduate students be, one says that the best way to learn is to teach. I think this is a very common saying, right? Can we make our undergraduate and postgraduate students learn and then teach? And teach as volunteers for vulnerable and disadvantaged children, for NGOs? Can we integrate social community work? And mind you, community work gets you brownie points for foreign education admissions, right? So I think that's a carrot, right? For students, especially who are from upper sections of society and who would like to go abroad for education. I think it serves two aims. One is you're reaching out to the most vulnerable and disadvantaged children. You're improving learning of graduate and postgraduate students, because, as they say, the best way to learn is to start teaching. Okay, so that you get into nitty-gritty of the subject. The goal two was ensuring by 2015 all children, particularly girl child education belonging to ethnic minorities, have access to and completely free and compulsory primary education. This is, of course, the government's domain, and maybe many of us would not be able to do much about it. Goal three, ensuring that learning needs of all young people and adults are met through equitable access to appropriate learning, right? Goal for 50% improvement in levels of adult literacy. Can we make our undergraduate and postgraduate students teach adults, teach their communities, especially women, equitable access to basic and continuing education for all adults? Goal five, eliminating gender disparities, right? And this is a college for women, as I see, right? And I think it's important that we reach out as a social commitment. Can we partner hands as colleges with corporate social responsibility departments of large multinationals and Indian companies, and work together and expose our students of tomorrow, or the professionals of tomorrow, into voluntary opportunities where they not only learn for their own sake but also do good to society, and get certain focus on their learning, right? And improving all aspects of quality of education, ensuring excellence of all, so that all recognized and measurable learning outcomes are achieved by all, especially in foundational literacy, numeracy, and essential life skills, right? Okay, so I have come to end of what I had to say, right? Very importantly, I think that's my this. I would love to answer some questions or any comments or clarifications, anything that we would you would like to know, and I'm open to this, right? Any feedback, any this that it would be great. It would be great to hear some of you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the participants end?
I think questions, comments, feedback, anything is welcome. Doesn't matter. I want to hear some voices. That will be great from educators.
Anybody would like to ask, question up, or tell
Any,
your feedback?
yeah, please. Any clarifications, comments, inputs for us to
You can
improve
just
as a
raise your
community?
hand. You can just raise your hand. There is a question, sir. Could any rural place be developed with the development in STEAM, science, technology, and engineering, mathematics, management, and medical fields?
Yeah, I think it's from. I see it's from RS Kiran, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I see. That's where I was saying that I think depending on where you are, whether you're in urban area or semi-urban area, I think it's important that you could join hands, right? One of the problems of sociological problems of going to rural areas would be finding teachers in STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, management, medical fields, and we could use community practice of students, right? Community practice, join hands with NGOs, join hands with corporate CSR, motivate your students to do some community practice, to go and teach rural students. That way, you would also help the government in equitable, distribution of knowledge. You could have equitable, bridge the digital divide. Look at very low end, sort of this, and these are, I think, very very important things that one can do. So I think, but it requires a multi collaborative approach. It needs a multi stakeholder approach. I don't think any one of us alone can do it. I think all of us together can do wonders, but I don't think any one of us can do. I think Dr. Kiran, I think you will have to take the initiative to extend your hand, to go to multiple stakeholders, to motivate your students, to do some community work. It may not be regular, but on and off. Give them some credits for that if it helps to motivate them. And I think we'll have to find a way out, right? We'll have to find a way out. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Anybody else?
We have Padmaja Desai, madam, has raised her hand. Ma'am, you can please unmute yourself.
Madam, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, one question for my question is, what is the effect of this digital education system for rural students?
For rural students.
Sir. What is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
effect
that's
of
exactly,
this
yeah, yeah,
digital?
yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I was, responding to Dr. Kiran, I think, right? I think there is a problem, right? And that's what the challenges, we have talked about digital divide, we've talked about inequitable distribution of information. But I think the pandemic has also shown us how people who are blessed, right? Who at least thank, God that we have 2 square meals a day and we are alive, how we could really look at helping out rural students, how as educators, as students, as academic administrators, how do we really get together? How do we also join hands with corporates and NGOs? See, NGOs are doing a lot in rural areas, right, in terms of education. Can all of us get together? I think we're all working in silos. We're all looking at our problems in different silos. I think we all need to have a to sort of join hands with
Okay, sir.
district administrators. I don't know, I myself, I have never reached out areas, right? Why can't we talk to the district magistrate and the NGOs working in that area and join hands with the CSR companies in that area? So I'm sure we could do it, right? And I think it requires us taking the first two steps so that we could look at it that way.
Thank you, sir. I hope, madam, you are satisfied with the answer.
You have a
Okay,
question?
madam. Okay. Okay, madam.
Nice to see you here.
Yeah. Anybody? Any more questions?
Please.
Any more questions?
I hope I've been able to provide some insights,
Yes, sir.
uh, but I think it requires a joint collaborative effort by all of us coming together. See, one of the issues in education is that we tend to work in our own silos, right? We tend to work in our own institutions, and I think we'll need to get together in this, right? And really work together on this. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir, for the informative session. It was really very informative, and most of the comments are with the excellent session and the speaker of the session. So I would like to call our HOD of management to propose vote of thanks for the session.
Thank you.
The best and beautiful things in the world could not be seen or even touched. They must be felt by heart. Thank you. Thank you is one such prayer among them. Good afternoon to one and all present here. I, Romana Tabasum, HOD of Management, take the privilege to propose vote of thanks on second day of National Level Faculty Development Program on sub-theme Future Perspective of Digital Education. First and foremost, I extend my sincere gratitude and respect to the resource person, Professor Amit Gupta, for not only sparing his valuable time for us, but also enlightening us with a commendable talk on the subject Future Perspective of Digital Education and its challenges. Sir, on behalf of Abbas College for Women and on my own behalf, I extend a profound thank to you. I heartfelt thank to our principal, Professor Zubeda Begum, for inspiring us in organizing this program. Madam, on behalf of all present, I thank you. My thank is due to Dr. M.S. Vidya, IQAC coordinator, and her team for devoting a lot of time and energy in organizing this program. Madam, on behalf of all present here, I thank you. This vote of thanks would be largely incomplete without expressing my gratitude to the participant and my dear colleagues. I thank all the participants and my dear colleagues for joining us today and making it a successful one. Finally, I thank one and all. So we see you tomorrow for tomorrow's session.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And
Thank
I
you.
invite all the participants to join for the tomorrow's session of NEP. And tomorrow is the last session of the first FDP of 3 days national level FDP program. And we have the next FDP of 3 days in the coming week from 27th. I request all the participants to please register for that. The link will be available tomorrow at the chat box at the end of the session of tomorrow NEP program.
So all of you have a good session tomorrow and enjoy your FDP and the rest of your season. Thank you. Stay
Thank
safe
you, sir.
and
Thank
stay
you.
safe
Thank
and
you
take
all the
care.
participants. Thank you all the participants. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.